In the heart of Chicago, where towering buildings cast long shadows on crowded streets, the studio lights of a popular televised talent show flickered with anticipation. The evening's theme was hidden talents, and the audience buzzed with excitement, expecting strange performances and maybe a few laughs. But the producers had something else planned, a viral moment. They had invited an elderly woman named Eliza Mayfield to perform, not because they expected talent, but because they expected to mock her. Eliza, 82 years old, had responded to the open audition flyer posted on a bulletin board outside her senior center. The ad had read, "Got a hidden talent? We want to see it." She had smiled when she read it. It had been years, decades, since she had played piano for anyone outside her small circle, but something stirred in her that day. She filled out the application with careful cursive and mailed it in. Now, standing backstage, Eliza clutched the hem of her floral dress. A young production assistant smiled at her with condescension, adjusting her mic and saying, "Don't worry, just have fun out there. They'll love you no matter what." She meant well, but the undertone was clear. No one expected much from an old lady with trembling hands. As Eliza stepped out onto the stage, the studio audience fell into an awkward silence. A few people chuckled softly. One judge raised an eyebrow. The host, a flashy former boy band singer turned TV personality, gave her a grin that bordered on disrespectful. "Welcome, Miss Eliza. You ready to show us what you've got?" She nodded calmly. "And what will you be doing for us tonight?" "I'll be playing the piano," she said gently. "Oh, I see. Okay, well, the stage is yours," he said, gesturing grandly toward the shiny black Steinway piano at the center of the stage. Eliza walked slowly, every step deliberate. The overhead lights gleamed off her silver bun. She sat down carefully on the bench, adjusted the height with a quiet grace, and took a deep breath. The camera zoomed in on her hands, worn, spotted with age, trembling just slightly. A few audience members exchanged knowing glances. Then she placed her fingers on the keys. What came next silenced every laugh, every whisper, every doubt. A single chord, soft but resonant, rang out like a whisper from the past, then another and another. The notes began to flow, each one cascading into the next, weaving a melody so rich and emotional that the audience seemed to collectively hold its breath. Her hands, no longer shaky, moved with the precision of a concert pianist. Her fingers danced over the ivory keys with speed, agility, and power that no one had expected, because no one had cared to imagine she was capable of it. The piece she chose was Chopin, complex, emotional, technically brutal, and she played it not like a student, but like a master. The lights softened. The camera panned across the crowd. The smirks were gone, replaced by awe. One judge leaned forward, his jaw slack. The host stood frozen, his cue cards forgotten in his hands. Even the band in the corner stage had stopped moving. Eliza's face was calm, but her eyes glistened. For her, it wasn't about showing off. It wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about reclaiming a piece of herself that had been quiet for too long. Each note was a memory of smoky jazz clubs, grand concert halls, and her late husband who used to sit in the front row, always with a red rose. When the final note rang out, the silence lingered. Then, like a wave crashing, the entire room erupted in thunderous applause. People rose to their feet. Some clapped, others cheered, a few wiped away tears. Eliza turned slightly and gave the audience a small smile, then looked down, placing her hand gently on the piano. A silent thank you to the instrument that had been part of her soul for so long. Behind the cameras, producers stared at each other, stunned. Their planned mockery had turned into something real, something beautiful, and they had no idea. The best was yet to come. As the standing ovation continued, Eliza remained seated at the piano, her hands gently resting on the keys. It wasn't pride that kept her still. It was peace. The kind of peace that comes from finally being seen for who you really are. Backstage, the show's producer, a fast-talking man named Greg, was already barking into his headset. "We need to find out more about her. Get a camera crew ready. That clip's going viral tonight." But Eliza didn't hear the chaos behind the scenes. She slowly rose from the bench and gave a little bow. The host regained his composure, hurrying back to center stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, trying to hide his shock, "Miss Eliza Mayfield. That was absolutely stunning. I think I speak for everyone here when I say, wow." He turned to the judges. The first, a former Broadway star known for harsh critiques, stood and applauded with real emotion. "Eliza," she said, "I came here tonight expecting to be mildly entertained. But what you just did, that was world class. That was art." The second judge, a pop producer with millions of Instagram followers, nodded, his voice softer than usual. "I've worked with some of the best pianists in the business, and you just schooled all of them. That was magic." The third judge, an older jazz legend named Miles, leaned into his mic. "You ever play at Lincoln Center?" he asked. Eliza smiled politely. "Once or twice?" He chuckled, shaking his head. "I knew it. You've got hands that know stories." The crowd applauded again. But before Eliza could step away, the host asked, "Eliza, can we ask, where have you been hiding all these years?" She hesitated for a second, then said softly, "I wasn't hiding. I was living, raising children, teaching lessons, playing when I could. Life doesn't always take you where you plan to go, but sometimes it brings you back." In the days that followed, her performance lit up the internet. Clips were shared by celebrities, news outlets, and music schools across the globe. Viewers commented from every continent. "I'm crying watching this," one wrote. "This woman reminds me of my grandmother, a talent the world overlooked." Within a week, Eliza was invited to appear on several major talk shows. One interview revealed she had studied under a renowned pianist in her youth, and once received an offer to join a European orchestra. An offer she turned down to care for her ailing mother and younger siblings after her father died. She'd spent the rest of her life in service to others, as a caregiver, music teacher, and community volunteer. And though she never sought fame, the world had finally come knocking. What no one expected was what Eliza did next. A few days after her viral performance, Eliza returned to the talent show stage, not as a contestant, but as a guest. The producers had planned a surprise tribute for her, but Eliza had her own surprise. When asked what she planned to do with all the sudden attention, she said, "I've been offered recording contracts and guest performances in cities I never dreamed of visiting. But there are so many children in this country, especially in underfunded communities, who will never touch a piano, never know they have a gift, because no one gave them the chance." The host leaned in. "So what are you saying?" "I'm donating everything," she said. "Every dime I earn from this attention will go toward building music programs in public schools. Kids deserve to find their melody, the way I found mine again all these years later." There was silence, and then applause. Not the excited kind, but the deeply moved kind. People in the audience wept openly. 1 week later, the Eliza Mayfield Foundation was officially launched, receiving donations from around the world. Music stores partnered to provide instruments. Retired musicians volunteered to teach. Eliza continued to play, not in stadiums but in schools, libraries and hospitals. She'd sit down, play a few bars, and tell stories about love, sacrifice, and the notes in between. And wherever she played, she reminded people, young or old, rich or poor, that greatness doesn't fade with age, and that the heart behind the music is what truly moves us. In the end, the joke wasn't on Eliza. It was on all those who forgot that beauty doesn't come with an age limit. It only grows stronger with time.